Hello and welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. This is going to be a report about the background to what happened last Thursday before the Techno Crime Fighters Forum, which led to its cancellation. But because I'm on my own and I couldn't actually check the sound, and I expect this broadcast to be heavily sabotaged, let me just check with the chat. Can you guys actually hear me okay, or do I sound like a chipmunk, or is there any weirdness? If you could just give me some feedback. So I just would like to say, okay, I've just, sorry, I meant to say, can you hear me okay? Okay, fantastic, good. Because I'm a bit paranoid because I had to deal with some sort of sabotage. So first of all, one of the things I would like to say is that yes, Techno Crime Fighters Forum has come to an end last Thursday. So there will be no more Techno Crime Fighters Forum. But I'm going to relaunch the show, and it will start next Thursday. So after the hiccup last Thursday, which I'll explain in more detail what exactly happened, because it's not everything as it seemed. I just want you to know that the support for the victims will continue. We have worked incredibly hard to build a community, to bring people together. Also, we saw that every week people met in the chat, exchanged tips and everything, and we just cannot give it up. We're not going to give it up. And we're also in a very, very crucial phase because now a lot of court cases are rolling in. So there's no way we're going to snip the communication with the community. And in fact, I encourage you strongly. I have done it before, but I really encourage you all to launch your own foray and get going, because one of the things I'm really against as a systems analyst is any sort of bottlenecks, any reliance on individual nodes, because if for sabotage or death by malicious or natural causes, that node is busted open, then we are all screwed. So we can't have that, okay? So if anything, first of all, I would like to thank absolutely everybody who has written to me and expressed their support. I have now understood that a lot of people were in deep shock about what happened and couldn't understand. I can only tell you that I have been in even more shock, and I have been the last one to actually know beforehand that this is what's going to happen. As many of you know, I was in the chat. I didn't even know I was going to be excluded from the broadcast. So it was extremely unusual, but I will explain how it came about. And I'll I think it is a lesson to all of us what just happened. And we have to be extremely vigilant, because nothing is what it actually seemed. And I will use this broadcast to actually try to explain what happened. And this broadcast is not about some sort of retaliation or any sort of mudslinging. I just would like to bring forward all the facts that were not known. And I want you all to start, do the forensics yourself and do the analysis yourself, and maybe see if you see anything similar in your own families or in your own life. Maybe you know how to handle this, okay? Because I think what happened was, first of all, completely different from what it looked like, and second of all, it was much, much bigger from what it actually looked like. So I would like us all to just stay level-headed, take some distance, let it all cool down, and then really come back to it and do the proper forensics, okay? Because at the end of the day, the Technofora were meant to be, a sort of let's all learn how to do the forensics properly sort of broadcast. So after a year and a half of that, we should by now have a good idea how to begin to do the forensics. So this is what today's broadcast is about. It's not about smearing my colleagues or anything, or any sort of anger. I was in massive shock, I have to say. And then unfortunately on Friday, the day after, even more things happened, but I was also tortured extremely. And when a cataclysmic event like that happens, the intelligence agencies pounce on the victim. So as soon as they sense weakness, they really come in and they try to break you. So I spent the entirety of Friday. I was tortured with the chips that are implanted on the top of my skull, actually all around, but especially the ones on the top were turned on. And they caused so much pain that I ran around Friday on the verge of throwing up pretty much the entire day just from the pain torture alone. Eventually, I fled my home, and there was a lot of painkillers. I managed to drive my car far, far away. And in the end, I took refuge somewhere half up a mountain in Switzerland. And I could just get some relief. And then another bit of big news hit me. So it was just relentless. And Saturday, the entire torture continued. And after 2 days of really intense physical torture, I have to say I wanted to make this broadcast on Sunday so that everybody can see it just in their own time when there's peace and quiet and no work, and you've got an hopefully open and relaxed mind. Well, more than on a Monday anyway. But I have to say on Sunday, I was just, barely responsive. I just lay on the sofa and I could barely hold the thought. I was so exhausted. So this is why today's the first day I'm actually back up on my feet, and that's why I'm catching up now. But I did have a lot of time to think everything through, and I would like to present what actually happened, okay? So on the Thursday, I have to say I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know at all that I was going to be barred from the broadcast. I did not know that this would be the final broadcast. Absolutely not. In fact, just a week before, after the Techno Crime Fighters Forum 71, the Thursday before, the entire team had been discussing that actually we want to have even launch a sideshow where we are just discussing all the declassified documents. We were wondering maybe it is just too dry to just have it so intensely, but for court cases, it would be a really good idea. And as I keep telling people, Dr. Millicent Black has a lot of research, really, I mean, a lot. She has researched this for, I think 2 decades, and she has already had a federal court case. She had already prepared a lot of material, and she has so much. I am overwhelmed. So we intended to just step through it and actually discuss it together and have that almost as a kind of preparation for the references for the court cases. So after the week before, I was actually thinking about how we can accommodate another show. This is what I was, thinking about. I was already thinking, okay, what sort of documents do we want to include? So you can imagine that was a totally, utterly different sort of trend. I thought, okay, techno is going to continue. We're even going to have an actual spin-off where we're going to really a lot of technical detail. So this is what I, finished the previous show with, and, this is how I went into the weekend. Now, on Sunday, I got an email from Ramola, which also took me by surprise, because she said that she wanted to withdraw from techno to focus on her own projects. So as most of you know, she has a very good platform, and she has been interviewing a lot of people, and she can tell that's really taking off. So she wanted to, as I understood, continue with her YouTube channel, her platform, her interviewing, and so on and so on. So that was great, but I thought, okay, we have Millicent and her research, and as you also know, throughout the last year and a half, it's only very recent that Millicent's video quality and audio quality was actually excellent as it was the last 2 times, because before it was always hacked. Her devices were drained of power live. The audio quality was totally demolished. She was cut off, and so on and so on. So this is, what happened. But so as I got this email from Ramola, hearing that she's going to withdraw, I thought, okay, well, what I will do is I'll just, if she can't do it, she said she doesn't have the time. She's got other projects. She also wants to, she's got also a family to take care of, and so on. So I totally understood. And I thought, okay, well, what I will do is I will just, host the show on my channel. She has been hosting it for a year and a half on hers. If she's withdrawing, I will host it on mine, or I'll host it on the days that she's not there, because originally she actually said one option would be that we are running it only 2 times or 3 times per month. So maybe, every 2 weeks. But then with what we discussed the week before, I thought, well, this doesn't really make much sense, because we're just, wanted to do a spin-off. So if I take over the hosting, then we can discuss Millicent's research, we can continue. And the other thing is, I know that if it's not weekly, you will forget about it. I will forget about it, So we already had the difficulty with Melanie, with the German version of the Techno Forum, that we had a very long hiatus because of, what happened at Hospital Erasmus. The baby arrived and then the disaster struck. And then we wanted to relaunch. And then, sometimes it was Friday, we couldn't do Friday. And because there was so much going on, sometimes we had agreed, okay, we're going to meet Friday, and I completely forgot. So I had to apologize to Melanie. We had to do it on Saturday because with all the shooting through the head and everything else that was going on, I literally just forgot. I mean, this is embarrassing when you're one of the panelists, right? But when you're one of the viewers, I assure you this is going to happen to you as well. So if something is weekly, you can, it's happening, you get into a schedule, that's the week of the day, okay, yes, in the evening, that's what I do on my lunch break. But if it's just twice per month, or 3 times, that's even worse. You don't know, is this now Techno Week or not? Well, I know what's going to happen. We're going to lose members of the community. People will forget. We will not be able to reach people in the same way. Yada, yada, yada. And besides, why? We can just, get the technical discussion of the technical documents in and just do it, every week to keep the schedule. And by the way, this is exactly what TV shows do. They're using exactly this sort of, the habit. We're all creatures of habit as humans. And that's why the TV shows are always weekly. They're either daily or they're weekly. But this is how to really draw an audience. So I didn't want to lose the community and I didn't want to lose the viewership. So what then happened is that I think Ramola took offense that I wanted to host it on my channel. And this is what the original argument was about on the Sunday preceding this. It was actually about the frequency of techno and who's going to host it. Okay, so totally different view. And when I said that I'm going to host it, Ramola said first, no, I can't, because she already put her journalistic seal on it. And that's why it has to remain on her channel. Now, as you can imagine, I absolutely did not agree with that point. I have hosted the forum before, several times. It's not a problem. It doesn't matter which channel it is on, and what sort of argument is that anyway? Because this is a team effort, okay? This was meant to be the broadcast of the entire joint investigation team. It was not meant to be Ramola D Productions, okay? So this is what the argument actually erupted about. I just want to continue this thing. For a year and a half, I didn't care that it was on Ramola's channel, right? I don't mind. I promoted it just the same. And then when it was just for, necessity, it was to be on my channel, and there are big roadblocks because of journalistic seals. You can imagine that I'm going to object to that. And I did. And then the counter argument was, no, I cannot be trusted with hosting the forum. Okay, this is what Ramola took objection to. And also, I think she misunderstood because I said something like, okay, I'm going to host it. Karen also said that, she's busy. She's got things to do as well. And she said she would prefer maybe once monthly. Okay, and I thought, well, somewhere between, 2 to 3 times per month or once monthly. Some people will turn up every second or third show, but we need to keep the show on the road. That's what I thought. So I had phrased it that, okay, I will host it on my channel, and whoever has the time, just turn up. And Ramola took offense because she said, oh, are we 3 so totally expendable? And I just thought, oh, goodness, no, this is not what I said. I did not say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to go solo because you 3 are expendable. What I actually said is we really need to keep it going every week. And also, the chat is a platform where victims can meet every day. And by the way, I find it important that we check in every week as a community so that we can make sure that we're all alive. Like, seriously, this is just how bad it is. Victims do get killed off. And as you're making friendships in the chat and getting to know each other, I do expect that you keep track of each other and know, hang on, why is so-and-so not here, and maybe send him or her an email. So absolutely we're going to do it weekly, especially because we're in a covert war. All right, so these were the arguments, okay? And as you can tell, they have nothing absolutely sweet, nothing to do with what was presented on Thursday. So how on earth did it all come about? And this is where now it starts entering this kind of foggy realm of I don't know what the hell people were thinking, because out of this argument that I cannot be trusted with the hosting of the forum, the two arguments to prove, in inverted commas, that I cannot be trusted is because I occasionally say fuck on the live broadcast, as in what the fuck, and let's be honest, there's a lot to say that about. And the second thing was this accusation, and I would like to say unbased accusation, unfounded accusation, that I was appealing for random violence. Seriously, the last thing I'm appealing for is random violence when I'm banging on every week, and this was also reproached, that I'm banging on about the court cases. And Ramola said, no, it's not all about the court cases. And I said, no, of course it's not all about the court cases, but they're really important because that's the only civilized way we have in our society to stop murderers, serial killers, and utter degenerate maniacs, right? So the last thing I'm appealing for is random violence. As a matter of fact, what we have now conducted seditiously, treacherously by the intelligence agencies in Europe and America is precisely random violence, right? This is exactly what it is. You're driving your car and some sort of random gang stalkers machine gun you in the head, like me, every single time I drive my car. Or you just have a flat somewhere and you're being machine gunned in your own flat, randomly. You haven't done anything. You didn't have a court case. So random violence is what the gang stalkers do. Yes. And of course, if I would be, for random violence, I would have joined them long time ago. Don't you think? I could do covert murdering left, right, and center. And no, instead I'm picking a fight with the biggest crime cartel in the world. Seriously? Your accusation is that I'm appealing for random violence? And at no point did I say, oh, you know what, you victims, you should take your handguns and just machine gun gang stalkers down. I never said that. We discussed the case of Myron May, where, Myron May went out, he was a lawyer, and he shot people in the leg, I would say. He also shot people in the leg, right? Not in the head like the police does, or in your heart. Okay, big difference. And also, Karen had raised a valid point that he might have very well shot his gang stalkers, because very quickly you can recognize your gang stalkers. So we all could do that. I can't because I don't have a gun and I've never even touched a gun, so I can't even use a gun. Okay, I wouldn't even know how to uncock it. So, well, that solves that then, right? But I most certainly wasn't appealing for random violence. No, what I'm appealing for is, as I said repeatedly, is court cases, well-documented court cases where, unlike most court cases, we make all the evidence against the perpetrators public for posterity, so that ever after people can come back and actually look at the evidence and say, yes, this is what convicted these people. But then when we convict people of covert attacks, sedition, high treason, covert serial killing, right, and mass murder, or covert genocide and the subversion of our democracies with the intent to commit mass murder, then I do want the death penalty. Oh, hell yes. Right? And as Karen Melton Stewart said herself, we do not have the facilities, the prison facilities, to actually hold all the people who have committed covert serial killing and mass murder in a premeditated fashion, unprovoked, for financial gain. That is just how many people the intelligence agencies have recruited. So what do you think? Are we going to, would I advocate as a systems analyst that we build super prisons to have big hives of serial killing gang stalkers? No, we don't have it. And besides, I really fundamentally disagree with this. At some point, as a society, we have to go back to natural law and say whoever has in a premeditated fashion conspired to mass murder, that person deserves death. And I'm not talking about, one person is accused of having murdered one person and it's not sure if he's guilty or not. In those cases, I'm totally against the death penalty. But what we're talking about is killers Actually, government hired contract killers in your own neighborhood if you're a victim who's being machine gunned with use, like I am, right? People actively try to demolish your brain so that you end up in a care home, unable to take care of yourself, so that your relatives can be milked for the assets. We're talking about your children's brains being machine gunned to shits, yeah, and I'll say it so that you understand what I'm talking about. This is not a hypothetical scenario. This is exactly what's going on when people report that 8-year-olds have got Alzheimer's. They had their brains shot to shits by total government contractors and serial killers. Okay? Yeah. All these diplomats who had brain damage from so-called sonic weapons, no. They had their brain fried with microwave weapons that go through the walls. Whoever does something is even more dangerous than the old school serial killers or gunmen who were using classical guns, and that's simply because directed energy weapons do not leave forensic trails. Okay, you can shoot through a wall, make somebody instantly die on the spot, bam, like that, and there will not be a bullet hole. So bye forensics. Okay, so what we have is we have really large scale serial killers who have groomed and hired other serial killers to mass exterminate the population in a way where classical forensics can't get at them. What do you say to that? I would say let's find the fuckers and let's have transparent court cases with all the evidence, published and kept public forever after, for researchers and critical people to come and assess the judgment, and then let's just kill the fuckers. Seriously, in death penalties, not in random violence. This is what I actually stand for, okay? And the more data you have and the more you understand what these people have been doing to thousands and thousands of children, taking babies, actually sawing their heads off in rituals so that they can drink their blood and traumatize other people. And I'm not making this up. This is the staple, okay? This is the staple of satanic ritual, human sacrifice, that's being practiced all around the world. It's being practiced in South Africa, in the US, in Europe, okay, in Asia, in Israel, in Nigeria, everywhere, absolutely everywhere. Because this is a method. It's a method of brainwash and trauma-based mind control. And the murder of children has always been a heinous crime, throughout the millennia. It was never okay. So this is why it's being used to generate control files. Now, if you knew as much as I do, and if you am actually, most of the time an uber empath, and you actually had the ability to think yourself into the horror of a young child who finds herself trapped in a cage to be sacrificed, right? Or a young child who was forced to witness the murder of a baby or a young child. We have so many reports about that. And if you could, just mentally beam yourself into the mind of all these victims, many of whom are being held hostage in the basements of, for example, hospitals, as I've heard, but especially military bases, what would you feel? And what would you wish on the perpetrators? I wish on them the death penalty after orderly court cases. The last thing I will advocate is random violence or mob violence, for the simple reason that the mob is entirely infiltrated by the other side, by agents of the Crown Corporation, by Vatican Intel, by the Jesuits, by designers, by absolutely every criminal organization on the planet working in concert. So do you think I'm going to advocate random violence? I would be a moron. And I think the last thing that I got certified as is a moron. So, of course, I'm not ever, ever, ever advocating random violence, or that you as a victim take a gun and shoot your gang stalkers, even though you might feel like it. I don't, because also I know that especially if you're a victim, you will be, you'll be pretty much ripped to shreds by law enforcement. Okay, so I'm not advocating that, but I do advocate that civil society comes back again and there's a Nuremberg 2.0. And I also pointed in the Techno Crime Fighters, which was also bone of contention, by the way. I pointed to the Wikipedia entry for the Nuremberg trials, and I pointed to the image of, I think it was Goering or Goebbels. I always confuse these fucking Nazis. But anyway, it was Goering, I think. And I actually want to put in a correction because I had the two criminals confused in my head, and I actually thought that the person pictured on the Wikipedia page was said to have shot himself. And then Melanie corrected me, and she said, no, he was said to have taken poison. So this explains why bits of his skull aren't missing with those weapons from the Second World War. But the other thing is also that he's showing, the all-seeing eye wink as he's lying there, supposedly dead, which he absolutely isn't. And he also has one arm in his shirt, or his sleeve in his shirt, like that, which is the hidden hand. It's a secret sign of Freemasonry and of Vatican intel. Okay, so we've got the corpse of a Nazi. We've got the photo. Let's say we've got the photograph of a man who's said to be dead, winking with a hidden hand, and then later on there are reports that he's alive and well in Latin America. So what the hell do you think happened? I think what happened is that Nuremberg 1.0 was a big fat Masonic fraud. It was a show. Maybe some people died, but the real criminals did not. So I would say let's debug the Nuremberg project and have, a debugged Nuremberg 2.0 where we actually kill the war criminals after orderly court cases. That's what I'm actually advocating. So to make it absolutely clear, and I'll keep repeating it, and even so, I understand that people are against the death penalty, and even those people, I can reassure that it's not as bad as it seems, because when you do have court cases, right, one party saying the prosecution accusing these war criminals and arguing for the death penalty, it is always only an opening position in negotiations. People don't realize, but court cases are actually negotiations between two sides, especially if the topic is so hot, that the judge can't just pull out a staple judgment and just say, okay, in cases like that, we do this. All right. Now, in the vast majority of cases I've seen of war criminals, okay, you have this opening negotiation position of the death penalty. And in the end, if you're lucky, they'll get life in jail. If you don't, if you're not aiming for the death penalty, but you're just aiming for life in prison, you'll be negotiated down and these people will be out after 10 years max. That's what I expect. Okay, so I am so going to continue to advocate the death penalty. Oh, hell yes. Especially as things are, speeding up and more people end up with Alzheimer's, with children with Alzheimer's and the neurodegenerative diseases and so on and so on. Okay, so this is my position. And I want to make it absolutely clear that I'm not for random violence. As for the second accusation of swearing, oh, fuck yeah. Of course I am. Of course I am, right? Because I'm a victim. I have several of my family members murdered, right? I've been deprived of my family has been deprived of its heritage by this organized crime cartel made up of the Romanian Securitate, MI6, BND, and CIA, all working for the Crown Corporation and the Vatican Global Crime Cartel. Yes, of course I'm going to swear. But I'm also of the personal opinion that it is okay to use the full Oxford English Dictionary. In fact, sometimes it is for the better. I think it was the Challenger. There was one big, rocket. I think, was it the Challenger disaster? One of these rockets. There were several. But anyway, so when a lot of the astronauts actually died because this thing exploded midair, and that's a famous case in engineering because before the explosion, what was going to happen was actually flagged by the engineers. This is what was said. So there were insulation panels that detached during the launch. And as they detached and came crashing down, they took bits of the rocket with it and caused nonlinearity, and this whole thing just went kaboom midair during mid-launch. okay, and several people died. Now, what's so horrific about this is that engineers made a presentation about that. They have predicted this. They have pointed, apparently, this is what came out of it. They have pointed to this, and they were not heard. And when you see the original presentation, I as a scientist and somebody who's worked in large collaborations and also managed teams, I understand exactly what has happened there. The experts or the group of experts who were going to present this were too freaking scared to take the full responsibility, and they were too scared to actually blow up a many $million project just on science, alone, and they needed backing and they didn't get the backing. So it's a very conservative presentation. But when you have these launches, you've got people from the military there as well, listening to these presentations. And the guys from the military are probably great, but they're not the sharpest tools in the box because that's not the parameter they've been selected on. So when you're too highbrow and you're too Oxford or too science, you just can't get through to these people. If I had given the presentation, I would have gone in and my first sentence would be, well, I don't think it's safe to do the launch because as it stands, the whole thing might just blow the fuck up. Okay, and then let it sink in. Do you think the military leaders, who were there like, instead just listening to, solid state physics and lattice structures and stress and all this sort of stuff, wouldn't have suddenly woken up and said, sorry, I just heard blow the fuck up. What did he just say? Of course, right? It would have saved lives. And this is, by the way, why the military swear, because you need to get through to total boneheads and you have to keep it simple and forceful. So this is why I'm going to swear. And also, every single time I go on a massive rant, I get rave reviews. Why is that? It's because the victims snap out of learned helplessness. Because if somebody swears, you feel the energy, you feel the anger, it transfers to you, and that's exactly what you need to just snap out of passivity, of being passive, okay, and just get the heck going. And this is why. And I will continue swearing for therapeutic reasons, for myself, for you, and so that we actually be heard, okay? This is my policy. And if you've got a problem with that, fuck off. There's plenty of happy kitten videos and there's plenty of highbrow shows. And also, I think there's a much more serious point. One of the things that we are learning is that everything, this entire crime cartel has erected structures and rules and conventions and boundaries around us that are not natural. Okay, they are not natural, and they were never done just to make us all nicey, because at the same time, they're raping and murdering babies and children. So just the general niceness of the world is clearly not their, goal. So what is it? And it's very simply that if you don't swear and you don't get emotional, your communication with your fellow man or woman or child is not going to be effective. This is why it's so effective to really, sometimes just utterly lose it as a parent and start shouting, because suddenly your children will understand. I don't advocate it, but it works. My mother did it and it worked on us. We understood this is really big and important. And also, by the way, I am from Transylvania, and both Hungary and Transylvania, we are rather free in our use of language. We swear a lot, and all of our classes swear. For example, Hungary had, I think, was it the prime minister or one of these people who swore on one of the party conferences? It's hilarious because he actually admitted, oh, we've robbed and we stole and we fucked everybody, and hey, aren't we great? Now, a huge scandal and outrage ensued, but it was not about the swearing. I read this speech and I didn't even note the swearing. What it was about is that he admitted that they've lied, that they've stolen, and that they fucked everybody over. Okay, so this is, I think it was Megyeshi. So those people who want to, look this up. And it's very interesting, and it shows this cultural difference, because I read the speech and I didn't even notice the swearing. And I read the speech in Hungarian, and then I read the article about it in the Times. And the Times said, oh, the Hungarian head of state gave a very expletive-laden speech. And I was like, what? And the problem was he admitted he fucked the entire country over. That's what we're upset about in Hungary, not that he used words, related to genitalia. But anyway, you understand that for the Brits, that was the most shocking thing. I guess they are used to being totally fucked by the City of London and the Crown Corporation. So being, totally exploited and robbed was the least of their problems. But oh my God, the swearing. So it's a cultural difference. And I'm trying to make a serious point here, because what I come to learn is that in many ways, especially Transylvanian society, which was carved off from mainland Hungary, got preserved in its state at the end of the 19th century, and in many ways were more natural than the rest of the West. Okay, we are just open. If we feel like swearing, we do. We don't have an embargo on swearing. And if you want, and actually in our culture, if you really care about something and you want people to understand, you swear so the other parties understand you are absolutely passionate. This is outrageous. Okay, it's about understanding. And that is my culture, and I stand to it, and I think it's great. It has its place. Of course, when I give a presentation about just technical stuff, like in particle physics, there's no need to swear, because the entire audience is already listening. They know what I'm talking about, and I'm talking at a very, very high level, right? But should I report about something egregious to happen, then I do not have a problem with swearing, and my colleagues know that. So it's not about, not being highbrow, or like for the Americans, you're trailer trash if you use fuck. No, it's nothing to do with that. Besides, even if you are what's called trailer trash, as in, really poor white or really poor black, so what? Maybe you've got so many grievances, you've got the right to swear most of your time. So I want to stick to my guns, and I want us to just change the entire way we look at things. Besides, the other, big disagreement was that Millicent's policy was that the only swear word I'm allowed to use is the word bastard. And that's because the word bastard is in the King James Bible. Now, I'm an atheist, okay, and I'm also very tolerant, and I respect and support that people can express their religious feelings. But I am not willing to bow to other people's doctrines if I don't think they are justified. All right. And now this entire argument about the King James Bible, my very sweary take on this is, now that we discover what all the, that a lot of the royal households are basically the biggest mafiosis, and that also the Vatican is an organized crime cartel that is raping and murdering children. To me, it very much looks like the Bible that they have printed. Do you think these serial killing child rapists are going to give you the direct message from the most powerful creature in the universe? Don't you think this is the last thing that they would really want to, put out the bestseller, so that you all really know how to tap into the power of the most powerful being in the universe when they're an organized crime cartel? Do you think they're going to do that? No. So for me, the Bible is a brainwash manual. It's cartel signaling. It's the cartel saying how to, if you're a psychopath, how to really screw over the normals, how to exploit them. And in many ways, God, as it appears in the Bible, is a code word for the godfather, for the head of the mafia, okay? E capo di tutti capi, okay? That's God. And if, God giveth and God taketh away, it's pretty much the mafia can float you up to become rich and famous. But if you cross them, they're going to take all that away and crush you, okay? And, Omega, the last word, all this Omega symbolism and God symbolism, I assure you, you will find it all over these mafia organizations and the global crime cartel for this particular reason. So I am not, demolishing your religion, but what I'm saying is you need to, really go back, analyze, and find out what the true parts of your religion are, and actually think, tap into your own. If you say that you've got a link to God, tap into that maybe, find God yourself, as opposed to looking at what their brainwash manual, their big pamphlet is saying. Okay, this is my take. I'm an atheist. I'm not saying I want to do away with religion, but I would really rather be surrounded by religions that promote us all as human beings and love and supportiveness and productive, creative work, as opposed to child rape, deception, and genocide. Okay? And that instruction manual has been used for genocide. So, in a nutshell, I was not going to bow to some brainwash manual put out by some, late 16th century, early 17th century kiddie fuckers. Okay, that's the basic of it. So if they just included bastard, good on them, but they were raping children and probably sawing off the heads of babies. So do I care? No. I was educated at Oxford, so I'm going to use the full Oxford English Dictionary. Okay, that's my stance. And the other stance I had was that, Techno Crime Fighters Forum was an actual free speech platform, and this is what I valued it for. And it was me from Europe and 3 Americans, and I took deep, really umbrage at the fact that, are 3 Americans going to dictate what okay culture is to Europeans, especially to Eastern Europeans who have been exploited by America and the CIA and the Anglo-Saxon crime cartel. And I just said, no, this is my culture, okay? Swearing is part of my culture. I find it therapeutic. It helps people out of learned helplessness. It gets my message across. Maybe sometimes you feel I abuse it, but then get the hell over it. And if your biggest problem in life is swearing, I don't think you're target. Maybe you should watch something else, some TV shows or something. If you're target and swearing is your biggest problem, honestly, are you really a target or are you just a hypochondriac? Because if you're real target, I promise you've got bigger problems, like your family members being murdered. I tell you, swearing can be therapeutic. So these are the 2 major things that I've been accused of. But now I want to make this absolutely clear for posterity that you can refer back to this. This is my stance. I stand up for my culture, and most of all, I stand up for free speech. That's why I do not censor all the trolls anywhere. The only time I will censor a troll is if I see that they are attacking another victim or anything like that. They're going against the human dignity of victims, because I don't want my platform to be used to just smear them all, but I sometimes just don't have the time to police it. But this is actually what I stand for, okay? This is why I behave the way I do. All right? So just so that you understand. But now on to the things that really happened behind the scenes. I just made a few notes because I didn't want to leave points out. So now you understand what I really stand for. I want this to be a free speech platform. And also, I really am for diversity. If you're just a rapper and you just use swear words, I will still listen to your message and I will assess it for its content. Okay, and this is what I really want people to learn. So if I'm the sweary one, I'm the enfant terrible on the show, and I just get people into contact with swearing, I'm sorry, this is not gonna make my PhD in high energy physics puff away. I can do both. I encourage everybody to, aspire to both. So if your children by accident watch the show, you should say, okay, son, when you're above 18, you can swear, but, you maybe should also get a PhD in particle physics, and then we talk. That's what it's actually about. So I can do both worlds. I can walk around, and I'm comfortable walking around in both worlds. And having walked around in both worlds, I tell you, we need to interconnect. I am totally against the ivory towers. That's Oxford and Cambridge. That's actually their official, title that you will find this over and over, the ivory towers. Actually, they're also intelligence agencies in themselves and connected to the Crown Corporation. I didn't know that, but they're also ivory towers. And no, this is not what academics should be like. Or scientists, they need to study the world as it is now. And this means you need to be able to walk around everywhere. You need to be able to access the slums, and you need to be able to access high society, because if you're studying complex human systems, you need to understand both, okay? So, and I think on this platform, we need to bring the 2 together. I don't want to exclude anybody from the show that I'm launching now. This is what I'm going to get onto. It will be a free speech platform. Wherever the hell you come from, you can use the full Oxford English Dictionary. You can also occasionally use other words. If the content of foreign language words is too high, we need to get a translator, but in principle, I'm fine with that. I just want you to say the ideas, say your research, say what you stand for, and help us fight crime. Okay, this is what I really, really care about. So this is me now. And, after the last week of Techno Crime Fighters imploding, what I would like to say is that I'm relaunching this entire thing, and it will, I learned my lessons. So I will have a new platform. I will run it this time. I will absolutely fight tooth and claw that it will remain open. It will be a weekly thing, and anybody can say whatever the hell they like. Okay. And there's not going to be any restrictions. You can use as many 4-letter words as you think are necessary to get across your message. You can use also many, many letter words. You can also go highbrow. That's also totally fine with me. I'm not going to dumb you down either. So that is rule number 1. Everything in the Oxford English Dictionary goes. Rule number 2 for this new platform is that you need to draw attention to some sort of large-scale crime. Crime that affects you, but also other people. And the title is going to be Global Crime Fighters. Okay, Global Crime Fighters. So originally the Crime Fighters title was my idea, so I'm going to stick to that. So the Techno Crime Fighters is now come to an end, and now the new show will be the Global Crime Fighters. The other thing I also learned is that before it was a US-Europe collaboration. I still love Americans, and I'm not gonna, just say, oh my God, I'm so shocked, I'm not gonna work with Americans again. No, but I also realized that having this group, I just became, you get comfortable. You've got your team, you've got your colleagues, and you don't go out grazing and try to, get in other people. In the beginning, we actually did try to get in other people, but now I want to make this the entire premise to think global crime. People have contacted me from all around the world. There are journalists in Africa they're fighting this crime cartel, and they've been locked up, and all sorts of horrific things are happening. So in the olden days, Amnesty International would have, kicked into action. I feel that they're also captured. And I also feel that we all need to learn how to fight crime. I think this is it. In the 21st century, we all need to begin to understand actually true medicine. We all need to understand true intelligence, true diplomacy, true crime fighting, and we all of us need to be doing that. I think specialization in our society has its place, but too much specialization shows us that we have silos, we've got compartmentalization, and things start going really haywire. Okay, so the new show will be called Global Crime Fighters. Wherever you are in the world, I'm interested in you. The 3 premises on this show are: it's a free speech platform. You can use whatever word you want. You can say whatever you want. There are no restrictions on opinions. If I get racists on, I'm not going to silence them. I'm just going to, actually try to explain to them that race is not the issue, but actually this global crime cartel, because I find that this is the real way to deal with it. You don't stifle anything. You just really discuss it to the point, and you try to convince people, whatever their opinion. Okay, this is the thing. And the other thing is you have to draw attention to some sort of large-scale crime. And the third and final, requirement is that you also need to talk about what you did about it. So we spent on the Techno Crime Fighters Forum a lot of time revealing this criminality and how horrific it is, and we began to start fighting against it. And now as the fight is ramping up, I want this to be every week. We're talking about what the hell we're going to do about it right now. We know how horrific it is now, and now we're really fighting. And I've just seen that we've got exactly 101 viewers, 100 viewers watching us live. And I know from YouTube and from looking at other numbers, is that this number is usually out by the view numbers on YouTube are usually out between a factor of 10 to 100, depending on how censored you are. But typically it's out by a factor 10 at least. So, I think we've got quite a lot of people watching live, and I thank you for that. I thank you for the opportunity. So I want you to know that this has not come to an end. It will be Global Crime Fighters. I've got a few more things to say, so please bear with me a bit longer, because there are a few more things that I really want to do. I want to go through the forensics of what happened, and I want us all to just learn the lesson. But I would like to also share my screen and take you to my website. So hang on, so that you know where you can find it. I'm in the process of tidying up my website. So at the top, you will have the news. Here are different fields. I should say that I'm now making this equipment and detection field here. So parts from the FAQ, the device list has been moved over here. No information has disappeared. Now the documents like the affidavits from Intel agents and insiders has moved to the new research library, and I'll start sticking stuff in there. It's all for download, documents for download so that you can use it in your court cases, but it's actually here. This is what I want to point you to. So these are the old Techno Crime Fighters Forum episodes that ran from March 2017 to July 2018. I'm still incredibly proud of all the women on my team and this absolutely amazing achievement. I have to say, I love them all, absolutely all 4 women on my team. And I continue to support them all. And I think all of them are absolute superheroes in their own right. So this is it. The new broadcast is here, Global Crime Fighters. Because the episode is only launching next week, it's not hasn't appeared yet, but you can already see that the image that I've chosen for it. For now, I don't have a proper corporate logo. Is sorry, by the way, it shows Europe prominently, but you have to show the globe somewhere. So sorry about that. I sit in Switzerland, so somewhere here. But the entire point is the interconnections, okay? So this is why I like this image. It shows all the interconnections between people around the world. And this is what it actually is about, okay? So what I want to say is that we are going to expand this effort. And this will be global. We already have, people in Australia fighting this crime cartel. I'm aware that Japan has got very large victim organizations and very good ones. And with the diligence and discipline that the Japanese are famous for, I think they're also tackling this problem. And I would be delighted if we could hear from them what they are doing to fight their corner and fight this global crime cartel. I'm also aware that this crime cartel has moved into, for example, places like South Korea, where they also work really hard to change the culture away from traditional values. The crime cartel has absolutely devastated places in the Far East and Africa and Latin America. And especially very recently, there was strange things happening in Venezuela, which I will talk about coming Thursday, about what happened at the speech of their president Maduro. So, I want to talk about it, and I want us all to respect our individual cultures, our individual differences, our heritage, and what we stand for, and actually really try to learn from each other. And and also start to look out for each other, because my main message is that now, everywhere around the world, we are fighting the same global crime cartel. It's all the same. One of the things that was raised in the chat I call it the debacle issue of Techno Crime Fighters Forum, is they said, one problem, this was somebody in the chat, they said, one problem they have with me is that, I've never mentioned the Zionists. No, I do. And the Zionists are different from the Jewish people, okay? So Zionist is not equal Jew at all, So get that straight in your head. The Zionists are, a criminal cartel. And just as the Japanese have the Yakuza and the Italians have the Mafia, the Jewish people have the Zionists, okay? And they are a ruthless mafia like all the others. But one of the things I want you to understand is that, yes, please, yes, let's talk about whatever, the Khazarian mafia, the Zionists, any sort of mafia, but do not just get stuck on one of them. If you're talking about the Zionists, please also start researching the Chinese mafia, because it's huge, really powerful. Or the Yakuza, which has infiltrated the entire, industrial revolution in Japan, and the industrial power. Huge sums of money are being siphoned off to this global crime cartel, and the mafias around the world are interlinked. So the Americans fighting the deep state are actually fighting the global crime cartel. If you're in Africa and, or South Africa and you're fighting apartheid, you're fighting the global crime cartel. If you're in Africa and you're fighting a civil war or the consequences of a civil war, you are fighting the consequences of the asset stripping of this global crime cartel in your country. The same in Latin America. And when you look at global finance, you can't even call them money streams. They are financial torrents of such volume, it's hard to even imagine. And these torrents of finance are just ripping around the world and staging wars. And I say staging, okay, on purpose, and causing genocide. And it's all the same people, But the crime cartel works such that it has front organizations. So in every country, it will appear differently, But I also think we all need to come together worldwide, and we need to, cut the head of the snake off and, the heads of the crime cartel. We need to have court cases. We also need to start watching each other and what we're doing in court cases, and we need to ensure the integrity and the protection of our good judges globally, because only if we really support these people can we actually solve this in a civilized manner. And I also would like to say that if you do not solve this, what we have right now is already mob violence. We have it not just in places like Venezuela or in Africa. We have it in Europe and in the US. Here they're just called differently. They're called gang stalkers. We already have mob executions and covert murders. And we have the ramp up to a global genocide because the elite psychopathic degenerates want to kill us all, basically, and reduce us all down to 800 million people on planet Earth or whatever their number. Who cares? It's mad anyway, so this is what it's about. So this is what's going to happen on Thursday. We're going to relaunch with a global remit. And I think I will do, just to let things cool down with my team and find out what everybody wants to do. And if they're happy to continue, I will start just working myself, and I will do a couple of episodes on my own. It doesn't mean that I have cut my connections to my colleagues. No, not at all. But I just would like everybody to just have time to think about it and, just sort out the internal upheaval. But if people join, I want them to actually, want to join. And I want them to see what I actually work for, and, they can do that. So this is why I think probably appear 1 or 2 episodes on my own. But after that, I also would like to invite people from absolutely anywhere around the world to come and use the platform to raise whatever issues they have. In the olden days, the newspapers used to do this task, but forget about them now because they've been bought up by the global crime cartel. So, if you have journalists that have been unjustly put into prison, and these journalists have been fighting crime, and have a lifetime of fight behind them, please, come online, write to me, we'll arrange it. And, we will talk about these things. We need to hear about what's going on around the world. And we need to learn what sort of tricks are being pulled on us. And the more data we have, the better we will understand and learn. Okay, so this is what's going to happen. And I want to continue also the support for the targeted community who are being targeted by directed energy weapons, by the intelligence agencies and so on. Don't think that I am going to reduce the time. I'm going to focus on that problem. No, but I want you to also understand how finance and financial crime ties into paying the people who are killing you, and how you also have to lobby for financial regulation to stop targeting. You don't just have to lobby for a ban on directed energy weapons, because then they will use covert poisons. They will break into your home and just poison you and you die that way. Or they will poison the water supply, We have to really now drain this global swamp together, and we need to arrest people. So this is why I will open it up, but it's always with view towards stopping the current genocide, and stopping the injustices and the killing of innocent people. Okay, so let me get back to what happened last Thursday, and let me also, explain what happened behind the scenes, because there's also forensic things that you need to know about. Now, what happened on the surface of it is that there was this argument about me hosting it already, I think even I raised the whole swearing and violent stuff. I can't remember, I have to go through the email, but it's, eventually it turned out that, I can't be trusted with the hosting, which of course I object to. Then we had this discussion, but in the week before, it was not that in the previous episode we actually parted super amicably with new projects to launch. And we did not part like, oh my God, Katherine swearing and she's out of control. She's basically a lone gunman in the making. We need to terminate the entire show, which is what it sounded like last week, and which is why I was so incredibly pissed off, I mean, talk about smearing victims as, somehow mad or out of control or potentially violent. I mean, that's the worst thing you can do, right? And maybe you please all remember that I'm also a victim, I am a criminal investigator, but I'm also a victim here. So you can still use this as an attack weapon against me, and I'm not fine with that. Now, behind the scenes, so as I said, the argument started Sunday about the frequency and who's going to host it. And then Monday and Tuesday, I was really, really busy with my own stuff because there's people in my own life and stuff I have to do and finish off and, get going with private projects to just try to survive, okay? And I told Melanie we actually wanted to do a show, and we're thinking Monday or Tuesday, and I said, listen, I just don't have the time. And Wednesday, I had already something planned. So, anyway, so this is what happened. So Monday and Tuesday, I was pretty much out of touch. I was trying to reply to emails, but I had other things going on. And also, I should say, I'm suffering quite a lot, on camera sometimes, but especially off camera. So this is what happened. And then on Thursday, I come online. I expected the show to happen. I expected to appear on the show, and I expected it to be just a normal episode of Techno Crime Fighters Forum, one of many to come. And my hope would have been to actually hit 100 episodes, 25 more to go. And then we hit, so to hit 75, for example. And this is why there was no final episode prepared. If I'd known that it will be the final episode, one of the things I would have said, look, this is actually what it really is. It is a project by the late Dr. Paul Marco and Mindy Erkin. This was their project. This was their baby. And this was something bequeathed to humanity and to us. We had guardianship of this baby as, the joint investigation team, the team of us together. And if we had all unanimously decided to terminate it, this baby, abort the baby, first of all, I would have expected to be a unanimous decision, only as a last resort. And then the final episode would have been looking back through all the episodes and maybe have a best of and the highlights and all the different things that we achieved. That would be the civilized thing to do. But instead, I come online and I find an entire episode where I've been scapegoated, and I would like to say also smeared, and slandered, because I had in the time since Sunday, when this entire thing came up and I started being smeared with the accusations, and people had a problem when it sounded like, oh my God, I'm appealing for random violence. And I kept saying, no, I keep mentioning court cases and I keep saying it's an open negotiation position. So even if you're against the death penalty, don't worry, because we're lucky if you can get them for life in prison, And I kept saying that, and to me, it felt like I said that like a broken record. And then when my colleagues started using that as ammo, or especially Ramola, so that to explain why it can't be hosted on my channel, I kept saying, please point me to the exact point in the episodes that you've got an issue with. Point me to the minute mark, point me to the right episode. And there are 3 of you, okay? There's only 1 of me, and I'm really busy right now. So if you've got an issue, you produce the evidence. Is that too much to ask? And not one of them has actually pointed me to this day to an actual point in the Techno Forum, And I find that outrageous. Given that we're all criminal investigators and I can't expect my colleagues to point me to evidence when they're making accusations against me, is a bit too much, So I was pretty angry about that. especially because smearing me like appealing for random violence is dangerous. And second of all, it's exactly what the other side actually does every day. They kill people randomly. So how dare they smear me like that? This is what I thought on Thursday. Now the swearing, you can imagine that I thought, really? Okay, but I held it in. But, this is what happened. But I was totally shocked, and I thought it was absolutely the worst form. And this was a unilateral decision by Ramola that she barred me from the show. And she could do that because she was sending out the invites, and it was being hosted on her channel. So the digital invites to join the forum. And when I talked to Karen about this, she said that she didn't know that I was going to be excluded. I'm not, sure if these people realize that they're going to terminate the show. I think that was also a rather, driven by Ramola. And the entire discussion was never about terminating the show. What we were talking about is the frequency of the show. The absolute worst that would have happened would have been once monthly, but more likely 2 or 3 times per month. This was the discussion, So what the hell just happened? And I was just livid. After the show, I just said, what on earth were you guys thinking? And the other thing that really made me hit the roof, and that really, really, really made me hit the roof, and kept me rather upset for days on end, is that just in the previous week, I had launched the Affidavit Collection, which is a service to the entire community and rather a big endeavor. And this particular episode, I wanted to also launch the explanatory notes. So, boom, I'm suddenly deprived of this platform, and the platform just puffed into thin air. And not just that, this was the broadcast of the Joint Investigation Team as a team. So I was thinking, what, has the Joint Investigation Team also puffed into thin air? What the hell are you all doing? And by the way, this affidavit collection is the most detailed, really forensic getting information from the victims globally that has ever been launched. You maybe know that William Binney, former technical director of the NSA, and Kirk Wiebe, senior intelligence analyst at NSA, both really famous whistleblowers, launched a survey. But even that survey didn't really go into this forensic detail. To be fair, because at the time that was the first survey and it could not have, right? But it's also is not really poking at the core business plans of the biggest global crime cartel that's running currently a genocide. So if you have just launched an affidavit template and I have authored it, okay, and your team just ostracizes you and your team just, goes kaput, what the hell do you think is going to happen to you? In other words, how many weeks before I get assassinated? Yes, or one of my family members. And this is serious because just in the last few months, the crime cartel and the intelligence agencies in Germany have tried to assassinate both my mother and my father. So this is not a minor point. And if people remember, I spent, I think, 6 weeks in hiding in Hungary, trying not to die, in writing this affidavit, and then I publish it in the week after. My team just kicked me out and dissolve everything we've ever worked for. Really? This is a death sentence, guys. So this is what I said to them. I said, what on earth just happened? And then Karen said, well, it was never her intention. And this is gone. She didn't know that I'm going to be excluded. She thought we're going to put out a neutral note, if anything, a neutral note, neutral and fair, right, and terminate it like that, and not just try to, put an active hot argument. I mean, you just don't do that you discuss a hot argument without a cooling down period online, out of fairness. And then you exclude the person and you blame them totally. So Karen didn't anticipate this at all, And the more I actually looked into it, the more I realized that this was, a rearguard action from Ramola. And I was incredibly upset about that because I trusted Ramola 100%, And I did not think that she would take the disagreement we had about that and about me hosting it. And by the way, me hosting it maybe once or twice per month, right, is now a problem for the woman who's been hosting it for a year and a half. Really? So this was the real bone of contention here. And I think had I been allowed to come on the platform, I could have actually said it with one sentence, and suddenly the entire picture would have looked different. But now, for posterity, it looks like Techno was terminated because I swear so much and I'm out of control and I advocate killing people, which is couldn't be further. I do swear a lot and I'll stick to swearing, but I'm not advocating it couldn't be further from the truth. And Techno was not terminated because of that. Because I've been swearing for the last year and a half, and yes, Millicent had a big problem with it, but I said, I'm also an atheist, and I, could say that's unprofessional on a scientific show to say let's pray for people, but I do not, because I respect you, so let's not pull the unprofessional card either. That was my take on this. So this is why I support them all. So this is what really hurts. So we had this thing, and then it implodes. Then on Thursday night, I was trying to find out what happened. On Friday, I spent the entire day on the in this pain state of almost throwing up from pain until I managed to crawl on my gums down into the car and just flee this place. And then I'm somewhere half up on a hillside, on a mountainside in Switzerland, trying to just recover. And I get a message from Melanie that we should have had the show that night. I was really wondering if I can make it home because I'm tortured that much. Then I'm talking to Melanie about the show that should have happened on Friday in German. And then Melanie tells me that Ramola called her and told her that I'm an agent, I'm a plant, and I actually planned that my colleague Melanie was going to lose her baby in the hospital, and that's why I talked about the throat implant. Wow, now what do you say to that? Now this to me is a burnt earth policy. You implode one platform and you want to destroy another platform you're not even involved with, so that this person is utterly, totally destroyed. Now just imagine what that feels like, and how angry you could become. But I didn't get angry because then there were also other forensic details. And this is what I really want to talk about. I do not want to blame Ramola, but I want to point that this came from Ramola. Ramola did take these actions, and now I want to understand why. Because they are totally out of character, And I will sign that. I'll stand up in court and I'll say it if necessary, that they're totally out of character and I don't recognize Ramola. And I don't think it was Ramola. This is what I'm actually want to get across to you, but it's so bloody important you listen now, because what I'm going to say is going to, the implications are going to affect you all around the world. What actually happened on Wednesday that nobody knew about apart from myself, nobody on my team knew about this, and it was a huge breakthrough the day before this thing happened on Techno, is that on Wednesday I met Katherine Horton Fitz in Zurich. And we spent, I think, pretty much the entire day together. And we were talking for, I think, 8 hours. Okay? Pretty big, massive meeting. And I can tell you, I've already said that, Katherine is, I think, one of the cleverest women on the planet. She's certainly the cleverest woman on online and on YouTube who can listen to. And I can tell you, when you meet her in person, she's even more so, even more impressive. Now, why was this meeting so huge? Apart from the fact that Katherine is one of my personal heroes, the reason why this was so huge is because Katherine and I spent 8 hours talking about the crime cartel and what it does. Now, Katherine is the woman who has discovered the black budget in Hunt. All the money that came from the US government to go, for example, into housing projects in poor black neighborhoods. She discovered it goes woof into one big, massive black hole. Ooh, money stream torrents going in there, disappearing. And she tracked it. And she discovered that the money that disappeared there, absolutely, trillions, is going into the black budget. And for black, always, substitute criminal. It's secret because it's criminal. It's black because it's criminal, and black because it's deadly. So, she is pretty much the world expert on this. And this black budget is what's being used to fund all these projects around the world. Do you understand? Now, Katherine Horton Fitz was also the Assistant Secretary for Housing under George Bush Sr. Pretty big, okay? She knows what she talks about, what she's talking about, And I have to say, in those 8 hours, I learned so much. It just opened my mind, and I came home from that meeting. First of all, I was on a high. It was one of the best days in my life. I have learned more in those 8 hours than I have done in sometimes years of university, really, because suddenly the entire picture came together. But I also met somebody who was really high up, who's managed, billions of dollars of funds. She's a respected financial advisor who's famous globally. And then the next day, my group goes poof, and I don't recognize my colleagues. Now, what on earth could have happened there? And this is why you really need to listen now, because my view on this, even though this started building on Sunday, it started building just a few days before the meeting. So, Ramola sends the email on Sunday. I reply on Sunday. We start already having a disagreement and an argument. Monday, Tuesday, I'm only halfway involved because I'm so busy. Wednesday, I meet Katherine Horton Fitz, and Thursday, kaboom! Everything I've ever worked for is destroyed. Now, the only people who knew about this meeting were Katherine Horton Fitz, myself, and the CIA, and all the other intel agencies who read the email streams, because this was discussed via email. Now, what the hell do you think happened? Is this coincidence that such a cataclysmic event happens after such an absolutely mind-blowing breakthrough, and me learning so much, and me actually finally understanding so much? And both Katherine Horton Fitz is fighting the crime cartel, and I'm fighting the crime cartel, and we have this meeting. Of course it's not coincidence. So if it's not coincidence, what the hell could have just happened? And as I said, nobody on my team knew I had this meeting, and I kept it secret precisely so that the number of people, the number of emails going out, not because I distrust my team, but because the number of email records left will have, been amplified. And people maybe would have, mentioned something like that to other people, to maybe mention it to other people who were infiltrators and so on. So this is why. And I think what we were hit by were a pretty big, absolutely kick-ass neurotech assault. I really think that, because before that, I didn't have a problem. And there were also really, really strange things. So, for example, one of the things that I was accused by Ramola, and that she also said to my colleague Melanie, is Ramola said I would have echo-stalked her and would have echo-color-coded and echo-gestured her for months. And I would have harassed her week on week for months with that. Now, I'm sorry, sometimes I sit like this and sometimes I sit like that. I do not want to make the Illuminati all-seeing eye or the 666 or shit like that. Sometimes I'm just supporting my hand and I'm just like that, listening to other people. And that's something I do. I do not do cartel signaling because something like a year and a bit ago, I didn't even know about cartel signaling. That's why. I didn't know that this can be taken to be 666. I know now, but that's just a habit I have. So I'm not echo gesturing. I'm not echo color coding. What she meant was me, wearing, I don't know what, similar colors to her on the show. Now, me and Zurich, I don't know what Ramola's going to wear in Boston that day to our, Techno Crime Fighters Forum. And if you knew in how much havoc my life is as I'm in a war zone, you would know that every morning I go in and I'm glad that there's still, a washed shirt I can wear that day. And I'll just take the next thing that's in my wardrobe and I'll just wear it that day. This is how I operate. and when I've got the time, I do the laundry. So I do not have a big rainbow colored thing, where I just think, okay, right, I need to wear these colors. But this accusation was so odd that it fits 100% the way neurotech works, because the way neurotech works is that it amplifies things, or it amplifies things that you already, maybe suspicions you already have, or things you're wondering about, or it takes habits you have and applies it to others. And one of the things that Ramola has been very sharp about is picking out infiltrators and agents. And her and I, we compared notes many times and we agreed 100%, So what just happened? I think it just, it was amplified and misfired. That's what I genuinely think. Because I'm sorry, I'm not an agent. The last thing an agent would do is, after Philip Kerr went to the High Court against MI5, backed that right up a couple of, months later with another court case against MI5 and MI6 and GCHQ. This is what I did. I had a High Court case against them. I published the transcripts. Do you think MI5 would accuse themselves in a high court, get one of the agents to stage a court case after one person already took them to court for real? Do you actually think that? Or do you think the BND would piss off their masters and take them to court? Or do you think Swiss Intel, the HQ of the crime cartel, would really start to go into the hornet's nest and say, oh yeah, let's piss off the London branch of the Crown Corporation? No. So who the hell am I set to work for? What, the Russians or Mossad? I'm sorry, the Russians and Mossad are working with MI6 and the CIA. It's all the same corporation. So I am not an agent. I cannot be an agent. I had my family members killed by them. I can prove it. And I had my ancestors' land taken from me and from my family, So, I'm not an agent. I cannot be an agent. And so just as simple as it is. So this is it. But where does this come from? And I would say this is exactly something, either patterns of thought that you already have. And she was very good. She still is very good in spotting this stuff, like color coding. This is what she drew my attention to, the, mirroring with colors. Although I do find that gang stalkers sometimes will have color coding. But for example, in the city situation, to tell apart different strands of gang stalkers. So, for example, in Schaffhausen, I already have a documented gang stalking chain where they stalked me all day in Switzerland, in the town of Schaffhausen. And I noticed that I think it was team brown-green and team red-white. And brown, green, and red, white were in the high street, the shopping area of Schaffhausen. These were two gang stalking streams I recognized. And as I was going, I could see that it was alternating. They were passing the buck. So team red would pass it to white and they would alternate and they would pass it among each other as they went. And it looked to me like, an actual training ground for gang stalkers, And in the end, I unraveled this gang stalking chain because I spotted the color pattern. And in the end, I was looking for somebody who would have a green, bright green thing. And I thought, okay, and around the next corner, there has to be somebody standing somewhere, either wearing something bright green or having a bright green bag. And there's one scene where I'm saying that on video, and I go around the barrier and I can see somebody with a bright neon green folder in his arm, standing in front of a hotel. Oh yeah. So this is it. So you also have this color coding naturally, and they don't necessarily want to imitate you. It's just the color choice of the day, So you can have that as well. But anyway, I think this is really what happened. So behind the scenes, I think we were hit by this. And I was really shocked. And I thought, oh my God, I really have to up my game, because by meeting Katherine Horton Fitz, she is a pretty big fish, She is swimming in the big ocean. And before, I was in a local paddling pool. So when I meet her, I'm suddenly going out into the big wide ocean, and in the local paddling pool, this is the analogy in my head, your local paddling pool might have been infested by leeches, but the paddling pool is still too small for killer whales, But when you're out in the ocean, swimming along with Katherine Horton Fitz, don't be surprised if you're being swatted by the orcas, So what you do, when you suddenly draw attention to yourself as a tiny little goldfish out in the big ocean. And I would say, guys, we need to build ourselves a big fat harpoon. If we're suddenly surrounded by killer sharks or killer whales, whatever they are called, we need to really start to fight back. And I specifically need protection now, because I am going to continue the affidavit collection. This is a thing that's happening, and I'm currently looking out for and trying to recruit people who can support me. And I'm looking for people of high integrity, with enough experience, senior people who really can handle the crazy creatures in the ocean. And I think we should just all band together, and we need to have suddenly, big, I would say, fishing boats going out, big ironclad fishing boats, starting to hunt for these killer whales, and while I'm out there in my little dinghy boat in the high seas, I expect that somewhere within, shouting distance, I want some, big metal boats to just pull up and start hunting killer whales with me, please. Now's the time. Okay? So I think this is what actually happened. These are all the background stories that you didn't hear. And I do not blame my colleagues at all, because I actually, looking back, I almost blame myself that I didn't warn them I was going to meet Katherine Horton Fitz. I couldn't have done it before, because of the security, and the most important thing is to make this meeting happen. But I think what happened is that I entered, the high seas and the open waters, and they descended down on my defenseless team in the background. And they knew that if we really join forces with Katherine Horton Fitz investigation into the black budget, we are the evidence of what the black budget is being used for. And she also talks a lot about the secret space program. Now, the secret space program, I can tell you, also includes all those, satellites and lasers, and what do they call them these days? Phase arrays. A phased array to me sounds like a new form of laser. Okay, big fat laser out in space, floating, ready to take out any city of the world and make the buildings puff to dust, like it happened at 9/11, vaporize entire buildings within seconds. Now, this is what the secret space program is, and it has been funded, and all that kit has been launched up into orbit with the money stolen from the American people that should have actually reached, for example, poor black neighborhoods. Do you see? This is how it all hangs together. Now, I do have some sort of phone call. Unfortunately, sorry, I forgot to pull the phone out. But this is exactly what we're talking about. Now, this is why I totally disagree, but this is also why I think we have to be really, really, careful in accusing anybody. I don't accuse Ramola at all. But, it was not nice what happened, but I very strongly suspect that she was taken over. I was present when she found her chip the very first time. I mean, we all talked about all of us being chipped. She's got an RFID chip. And so, the thing is that I know that she's chipped just like I am. And the sad truth is that all of us can be taken over at a moment's notice. Through the head chip, through the non-stop, EEG that has been taken from our brains, we can, is this really perping? I mean, just listen to this phone call. I'm sorry. I think as soon as I mentioned neurotech, and as soon as I mentioned, Katherine Horton Fitz, I think the CIA is now scrambling. They're like, oh my God, we need to perp. What the hell are we going to do now? We need to stop her from talking anymore, So ignore that, please. It was not planned. But I would also like to say that what happened, even though I do not blame Ramola, because of the neurotech, because it's so powerful, and because it also revealed that she became actively malicious, actively trying to destroy the working relationship that I have with Melanie. She was, after imploding American and Europe collaboration, she also single-handedly was trying to bust the European work effort, and I'm absolutely not happy with that. I am so utterly not happy with that, and I do think this is extremely bad, because I don't think that she realizes that in Europe we are very fragmented. We've got the language barrier. The Americans have critical mass. They can reach critical mass to fight back against the crime cartel much easier because you all speak the same language. But I can take a car, drive just 1 hour in one direction, and people will be speaking a totally different language. If I drive, I think 1.5 hours in another direction, people will be speaking another language I don't understand. So French, Italian, just around me. This is how fragmented we are, already in Switzerland and in Europe. So to bust any sort of collaboration, especially one that is trying to get the chips out of people and have build a scanning platform so that victims can scan themselves at a real life university. This is a really important big project that transcends my team. So I cannot let that happen. And it was because of this 1 week rampage that she went on. And she has, as far as I can tell, pretty much single-handedly terminated the Techno Crime Fighters Forum. Behind my back, she spoke to Mindy, who I don't think was aware that I am so utterly not aware about this. I'm not aware. And Ramola on the show mentioned, she can't remember if Dr. Paul Marco got in touch with me or her first. Well, I remember she got in touch with me first. And then I really recommended Ramola to be interviewed. And that's how the whole thing actually came. But it was a platform that was Dr. Paul Marco's and Mindy Erkin's baby. So if we just kill the baby, we all have a say in this. And instead, it was done behind my back. And I understand it wasn't, as malicious as it came across. But nevertheless, I have to say there are a few things that I absolutely stand for. And there are 5 points that I totally stand with everything I've ever worked for. And number 1, as far as techno is concerned, this was something bequeathed to humanity by Dr. Paul Marco and Mindy Erkin. This is something that was to be respected. If some people bail out because they've got other ventures that, seem more successful, more fruitful, this is what they want to work on, fine, but they don't implode it for the others who are remaining. And before Techno, for example, Dr. Millicent Black didn't have a weekly forum. What's going to happen to her? Is Randy Webster, now that he sees that she doesn't have a weekly check-in place anymore, is he going to kill her and her family? That's something to consider, as well. So I think that this is, if it's bequeathed to you by somebody else, you have to respect it, you have to work to keep it alive, to make it better, and you don't single-handedly terminate it. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is that we do never, ever, ever, ever isolate a victim. The gang stalkers already tried to do that. And okay, I understand Ramola is really of the opinion that I'm an agent and that I'm a malicious agent who's, was responsible for the kidnap of Melanie's baby. But I'm sorry. I am a German national who studied in the UK and was a research fellow at Oxford, who now lives in Switzerland. I don't have any power over the Masonic networks in Belgium, in Brussels. I don't. I can't go to Masonic hospital like Hospital Erasmus, where, the Belgian queen gave birth to all her children. Don't you think that's a Masonic hospital? It's going to be like this with the royal family there, is it not? And do you think I can make them steal Melanie's baby less than 24 hours after the birth, lie to Melanie that the baby looks like it has jaundice when it really hasn't, and then make them call the police, have Melanie carted off at midnight the day after her cesarean, a major operation? She was carted off to another hospital and interrogated between midnight and 2 a.m. Then the next day, she was locked into the basement of Hospital Erasmus, where in the room where she was locked, there wasn't even a proper hospital bed, but just a dirty mattress on the floor. It looked like an MK Ultra, traumatization room. Do you think I've got the power to create in a hospital is, most hospitals don't have spare rooms unless they're Masonic Hospital involved in MK Ultra as a main business, because there are so many patients, they barely have rooms. Do you think I have the power to create this and create a dirty mattress on the floor for Melanie to be locked away and for the hospital to really get their ass into massive multi-million, euro liabilities? Do you think I've got the power to make them lock Melanie up after this scenario, lock me out, lock her father out, and then lock her up in psychiatry for a week under fraudulent charges? How the hell is the logic meant to work? And would I then come in and be the person who really hits the roof and screams the entire, psychiatric ward together? And as soon as we found out, I thought that Melanie is off the drugs immediately. And her father was a witness to this. And Melanie was a witness to this. Do you think that they would do an agent, and then the agent would put together a court bundle that's then not used by the lawyer who just says, no, we're not going to have your testimony? If I were an agent, they would have had my testimony at the court case. I would have used that, but they barred me. My witness testimony is the only one that hasn't entered, even though it was there. There was 10 pages with reference to all the evidence right there. And that's the one thing that didn't enter the court case. Do you think that makes sense? Really? Because I really think it doesn't. So anyway, this is the accusation. But even though if you're accusing somebody of being an agent, you do not put that person in danger and their family in danger when they've just launched a global effort, unless you really get the evidence. And my colleagues didn't even get me the evidence that, which bit in the Techno Forum am I appealing for random violence? Then you don't do stuff like that. You do not isolate victims. So I absolutely do not stand for that. So this is point number 2. Point number 3 is we do not take drastic action without informing everybody. And that is particularly the case when we're dealing with neurotech, it's ubiquitous. You do not take drastic action, because one of the things I've learned is that MI6 and the CIA, they love the drama, not least because everything we're doing is being televised. And I don't just mean the show. My private bedroom and my bathroom are being televised for a bunch of sick old farts as a subscription service, and I'm a soap opera to a bunch of old wankers. I even have the evidence, I even have the evidence for that. I was stalked by Lord Sumption, a Supreme Court judge in the UK. He is part of this, what actually Ramola uncovered in an interview with somebody, the torture club. There are a bunch of sick old bastards who do this sort of stuff, They love it. They love the drama. The CIA and MI6 love the drama because their ratings go up in the perv subscription, the pervert's Netflix subscription. Do you see? So we do not do anything drastic. And I encourage all the victims to really take this home with you. It's so hard, I know, because my family has been neurotech. And I tell you, when I see that, I lose it every single time. I have not much patience, especially with my forceful personality. I also really, just utterly lose it and let rip. And I shouldn't have done in the past, and I shouldn't in future, but it still happens. But please, when it's something this important in this public, we do not take any drastic action without informing everybody, and also without getting them to respond on the same platform. That was my main problem. Ramola claims to be a journalist, fine, but then one of the journalistic principles is that you allow people, they have a right to respond on the same platform. When a newspaper is printing errata, so corrections of stuff that they got wrong, it should be in exactly the same place where the article appeared. Of course, most of the time it isn't. It's on like page 16 and like a little short column where nobody reads it. But it should be actually where the article appeared originally. It's like, oh, sorry, by the way, last week at this place we had this article, but this is wrong. That is how real journalism works. And then you just bar somebody from their right to respond, and then you implode the platform that I can never ever go back to that viewership and explain myself to the community. What's that about? So this is what I also don't agree with. If I make any accusations, they have a right to reply. So if I make any sort of accusations publicly against the CIA or the MI6, especially MI6, MI5, and GCHQ, I'll make the same accusations in court where they have their lawyered up right to reply. I mean it, So this is it. And then the other thing is, I totally disagree with excluding people from decisions on a team effort. I worked my ass off for the last year and a half. And sometimes people, I don't think, realize how much hard work and research and thinking sits behind me just shaking facts and revelations out of my arm, out of my sleeve. That doesn't come from nothing. And after a year and a half, I do have a right to appear on the final episode. I do have a right to reply. And I do also, I think, it would have been polite, not to use the final episode as a let's all scapegoat Katherine episode, but keep it more general and keep it with a view to the victims. So this is what I disagree with, and I shall not, in the new venture, this will not happen, the entire excluding people. And the final thing I had a real problem with is not thinking through the consequences for others. What are the consequences for Millicent of not having a public view, given that she has a serial killer at her heels who has killed members of her family and continues to threaten to kill people? What are the consequences for me? Because I've launched the affidavit collection and I want to continue it. And what are the consequences for the victim community? This is what I really disagree with. If you take on any sort of big projects, if we really want to open us up to the community, if we take their viewership as our support, we have to give something back. This is what I really stand for. And if we give something back, if we launch projects, we see them through to the end. Unless, I don't know what, something happens to us. But it has to be something physical or really cataclysmic, and not just, what, I can't be bothered, I've got better things to do with my time now that I'm successful. This is what I really disagree with. And because Ramola was right, there are differences in ideology, and these are points that I fundamentally disagree with. And because there has been a week-long rampage by her, targeted against my work and pretty much trying to destroy it with the US collaboration and also with what happened in Europe. For this reason, I took the step of basically excluding Ramola from the joint investigation team. So, she was thrown out of the team. I still have to wait to find out what the other people want to do. If they want to continue the investigation, I would like to. I'm still very happy to work with, with Dr. Millicent Black, and I'm happy to work with Karen Melton Stewart, absolutely. And I have to say, I support them all. I continue to support them all, even Ramola, because I think it was mostly a neurotech attack, but I did see indication of malice. I did see indications of malice against me, indications of just, egocentricity, of just ignoring the needs of the community. And because of that, and because of having to put up a firewall and protect myself, I took the step to exclude her from the investigation team. But it's for these reasons. It's not because I think that her work is rubbish. No, I think her work is excellent. And she will continue to do excellent work. But we do disagree on this. And I am very, 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 very strong on my core principle of never, ever, ever stabbing anybody in the back. Especially not stabbing anybody in the back who has never harmed you. Instead, I was working with her. I did send her a bug detector that I had paid for and that she used to find the body implants. So I'm fighting against this criminality, and the least I expect is a minimum of respect for my work to just allow me to appear in the final episode and answer any sort of accusations. So it was very, very sad the way it panned out in the end. But as I said, this is not blame. There are some things I need to protect myself from, but it's not blame. I think the real people to blame here are the people who are operating the neurotech. And this is, I think, NSA, this is the CIA, this is GCHQ, this is certainly the NDB here in Switzerland, this is the BND, and other intelligence agencies around the world. They micromanage our neural processes by now. And, they are the people who are really to blame for this cataclysmic event, for the fact that it went the way it did. It suits them perfectly. And I think their goal is that every single time you have a breakthrough, they try to damage you even more, so that on the balance, you just keep being damaged. Even if you score against them, they have to score against you even harder, so that in the end they win. This is how the entire game is playing. And they can't kill you straight away, because if they killed everybody who they disagree with and want to get rid of immediately, we already would be 800 million people on planet Earth, and all of our systems would come crashing down. So they're going for this gradual thing of gradually grinding you into the dust, gradually killing you, so that ideally it cannot be traced back. But at the core of it, every single time you score, they want to score even harder against you. And I managed to meet Katherine Horton Fitz and have an absolutely mind-blowingly informative 8-hour meeting with her. And then the next day, they managed to implode the Techno Forum, and they pretty much fragmented and maybe even imploded the joint investigation team on that day. And then they were trying to implode the German Techno Crime Fighters platform. A triple whammy. This is what they were going for. And the number 3 is very important for them, So if you score against them, they will just go bam, bam, bam. So look at these triple hits. They'll always come in, typically, in 3 packages, 3 hits. So the Techno Forum was to be, has been destroyed. The joint investigation team was to be destroyed, and the Techno Crime Fighters was to be destroyed in retaliation. Now, this is how these orcas operate. But I got swatted by a pretty big fin, and I have to say it stunned me, because I was just trying to cope with my little, dinghy boat out in the high seas on that day. I did not expect it, but doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, because the orcas, by swatting me, drew my attention to their entire group, herd or school or whatever it's called for whales. And now we're on their trail. They swam off, but I know exactly where they are. And I think we should now get the fish trawlers and go for their breeding ground. And this is what we're going to do next Thursday. And, this is why I'm bringing in the financial advisors. I can tell you already that I would just absolutely love have a meeting of the global crime fighters talking to Katherine Horton Fitz. If that can be arranged, that would be amazing. But I've got other people who I was always dreaming about talking to. One of them is the financial regulator and investigator, Professor Bill Black. Not to be confused with the criminal scumbag Bill Black Jr., who was responsible for the attack on Karen. No. Professor Bill Black was in financial regulation, and he was involved in investigating the mortgage crisis. And he is one of these big brains we need to also tap into and actually understand the criminality, how it unfolded, what he was trying to do. And we have to also lobby for the work to be taken up where he left off, because he was also, I think he was thrown out of the regulatory body, and he was trying to appeal to people. But as I was investigating finance, I came across key people, key crime fighters who were my heroes and who really taught me a lot about this. And Katherine Horton Fitz is one of them. Professor Bill Black is another. I also, for example, I encourage everybody to read about the work of Dr. Lorraine Murray and also Professor Daryl Hamamoto, who are also investigating this crime and have done absolutely amazing work in fighting back. And we really need to understand their work. We need to understand what exactly they did to fight back. We need to amplify it. And we need to all now come together on this concerted effort. And of course, I would just, love to have all the Intel whistleblowers, on the show and really understand their work, because every single one of them is, did the whistleblowing, and then they went and worked really hard in fighting this. You probably already know that William Binney and Kirk Wiebe have a company called, I think it's called Pretty Good Knowledge, and they are trying to bring privacy back, so the firewalls to protect our private data. And it's our private data that's being used also in the neuroteching and in the financial attacks and many, many, many other forms of crime. So they have fought back. They are still fighting back tooth and claw, and we really need to understand, what they're working towards, and we need to support them. There's also Ray McGovern, one of my heroes. He is also fighting against the genocide in Palestine, also extremely important because Israel is also a hijack project, and the crime cartel is big, big, big in there, which you can tell from the satanic symbolism in the parliament building, for example, and many, many other things. And yes, so this is the actual project. So it will start Global Crime Fighters. I will do my utmost to expand the view and to actually honor that. Next week, I will also start with opening up the criminal investigation about what happened, the attacks against the speech of the president in Venezuela. I think there's lots of forensic detail that we can get our teeth in, a lot of cartel signaling and the usual stuff. And I also want to keep teaching people about cartel signaling, which is not a frivolous thing at all. It is not. It is much, much deeper than you can possibly imagine. It's gangster talk. It's a secret language that is being used by the crime cartel to communicate to their millions of members what they're up to. And unless you understand it, you cannot decode what's going on. But as soon as you do understand it, you already have a very good idea. And sometimes you get early warning. And also remember that cartel signaling was developed to communicate with an organized crime cartel. So thankfully, this is why people like me, who are utterly shit in cryptography and decrypting anything, I'm not very good at all. I really struggle decrypting nature and physics. That's what I really can do. I'm not a code breaker. So, this is why I have to really use cartel signaling and break that code, because it's a simple code. It was a code developed to talk with total cutthroats, okay, with gangsters, with thieves, with the absolute scum of society. So, the language is simple because the most simple-minded little psychos had to understand it, So, thankfully, that's what I can, Bill Binney does the hard stuff, I do the simple stuff. And, that's what I can crack, the sort of code. But as soon as you can crack it, you get all the messages suddenly decoded that all these little petty criminals, I mean, the highest level criminals and the petty criminals around you are also getting. And so I will continue that. So don't take it to be frivolous. Nothing I do is actually frivolous. This is what I was accused by MI5 and MI6 in court. They said that my case is frivolous or vexatious. This is what the IPT, Investigatory Powers Tribunal, said when they threw out my case. And this is what the Judge Holgate at the High Court said. This is not what Judge Spencer and Judge Edith said. On looking at their face, I saw that they understood that this is not a joke. This is not frivolous, not vexatious. However, this is what Judge Holgate said in echoing the judgment of the IPT. And I assure you, nothing I do is ever frivolous or vexatious. No, I do try to be vexatious, actually. Yeah. So non-frivolous or vexatious. That's what the judgment should have been. We have to be extremely vexatious against the crime cartel. And please understand that when I talk about adverts or music videos that maybe teenagers are watching, this is not frivolous. This is serious. And also understand that when I'm swearing, I do have something much deeper in mind. I am also aware of learned helplessness, of just people being extremely traumatized when they're listening to us. And swearing is one very good and very simple way of imparting energy on them, imparting force and empowerment. And also the sensation that, yes, it's okay to be disrespectful towards the system, because the system has been devised by criminal psychopaths and bastards. Now, because I was talking all this time, I didn't have a chance to read the chat at all. I hope that you guys can still hear me. And sometimes they mess with my microphone and I suddenly sound like a chipmunk. And I had nightmares that halfway through this very long, very important broadcast, people, I will be somehow, somehow, I don't know what, humiliated or something, but hopefully that hasn't happened. So this is my message. So I have to say, I have to stop now because I'm about to faint. You've no idea how hot it is. We had 36 degrees here in Switzerland, and I closed the windows so that we don't have any noise for the broadcast. And the stone is completely, it's warm, and now it's radiating off the heat. Following a principle of thermal waves and thermodynamics, the heat from the outside wall is now reaching the inside wall, and the stone walls are now radiating off maximum heat. So I need to, jump into the bathtub where I've got ice cubes and so on for half an hour. So this is it. But anyway, one of the things I want to say going forward is that there shouldn't be any anger, even if I also have to exclude people to protect myself and my projects. There is no anger. There's absolutely no disrespect. I respect all of these women 100%. We do have our differences. There were misunderstandings. Some Americans cannot handle my swearing. I'm sorry. That's just the way I roll, motherfucker. Okay. Sorry, I said that for joke and effect, really. But, this is, but it's different cultures. And we had enough of American hegemony. Really, seriously, no joke. We had enough. So we're like this in Europe, especially in Eastern Europe. And I just stand by that. And I want to say also that when I use swearing, it's not because I want to, devalue this program. I want to devalue the other side. I don't want to grant them, any sort of nice words to talk about the bullshit that they're up to, because I think they're utter scum. I think they have totally demolished everything that we stand for in humanity, and I will not, honor them with the best of my language. I will just say what abject crap they've been up to, and that's also part of it. But also my viewers, never ever think that I am going to, disrespect you. I'm not. Also, the accusation was made that, God, what if children listen to this? Well, I'm sorry, children shouldn't be listening to these broadcasts, because we're talking about genocide. We're talking about covert murder, about mutilation, about horrific crimes. Really, if you've got underage children, you have to protect them from this. It is your responsibility as an adult to fight this, but exactly so that you can create a safe haven for your children where they can grow up, and they can grow up with the entire, joyful anticipation towards the world. They don't need to be whacked at that age with problems that even we as adults cannot solve. So if children are watching this, there's, some real issues with parental control. That's what I would say. The most shocking thing should not be me saying fuck on the show. It should be that there's a global genocide that we cannot stop. People are being murdered in their own homes and in old people's homes and care homes and absolutely everywhere. So, okay, by now you understand who I am and what I'm standing for, and hopefully you understand what really happened last Thursday and how actually what you saw was just the tip of the iceberg. There was something much, much, much bigger under the bonnet, much more complex. And actually, it's a good thing in a sense that it happened that way, because it opens up this big, big topic of neurotechnology that we should have talked about in great detail for the past year and a half, but we didn't get around. We mentioned it many times, but we didn't really go into the forensics. And I tell you that neurotech is something that affects us all. There are reports about senior MI6 agents killing family members, which I believe was under neurotech influence. And also because, you might think, oh my God, it's a serial killer. Of course he killed his wife. No, it's the other way around. He's a serial killer. He can react off all his frustration at work. Why would he have to kill his wife? This is how it really is. So there's a lot of indication, and I know that I have a lot of headships, but I also know as a systems analyst that so has one of the people responsible for my targeting, Sir John Scarlett, former head of MI6. His head is full of chips too, and his families and his sons. And this is something that's uniting us all, you know? So I am telling you that the brain chips have head chips on the scalp, and brain chips have been now put into pretty much the entire world population, it seems. Scary thought. In Africa, in poor countries, because they could get away with everything. In rich countries, because they couldn't get away with quite the same amount, but still a lot. And we are so much, you can make so much money out of us. So in other words, any one of us can be taken over at a moment's notice. They most certainly can be taken over, with a few weeks' notice, which is what we had when the email was sent, arranging this meeting between Katherine Horton and me. And yes, the CIA and NSA have a huge amount of tech that's entirely devoted to taking over the population. That's what we're talking about. So what happened is exactly that. And this is why we forgive the victims, and we do not actually hold it against them. This is what I really think. My parents have been taken over, and that was demonstrated to me. So I have seen that in action. And I do not hold it against my parents. I don't hold it against Ramola. I still have to protect myself, though, and I have to protect the projects that I have, my babies, which is one of them is the affidavit collection. And that's going forward. So I've waffled enough tonight. Thank you for your attention. And just know that I will continue fighting for you. And whatever happens, we will get through this. But we will now also come together globally. I continue supporting the Americans. This is not me saying, oh, fuck the Americans, because look, they don't like my swearing. No. I will continue working with them. But we also need to get even more people on board. So my homework to you is to really start looking for the big whistleblowers who have a track record. I do want people with a track record, because if you get just anybody, you will be infiltrated and you will get jokers. So please start thinking about, in your country, who are the people who are really fighting crime, maybe national crime or maybe global crime, stuff that affects us all. Either way, please get in touch with those whistleblowers and ask them, do they want to come on this platform? Do they want to talk about this? We really need to learn from each other what the global crime cartel is up to, and we also need to learn from each other what the hell to do about it. So with this, I'll leave you, and we'll see each other next week. Oh, one thing. I want to announce that the Global Crime Fighters will start an hour later. So the Techno Crime Fighters Forum started at 11 a.m. in the US, and I want to shift it to midday. Midday is a really easy thing to remember in the US, and I think your lunch breaks start at 12 or 12:30. They certainly do here in Europe, so 12 midday, and so Europe, you start at 8 a.m. and work till, midday, and then you try to do 8 hours. So you've got 8 till 5 with a 1 hour lunch break. Sometimes in France, you've got a lunch break from midday to 2 in the afternoon, and, blah. In the UK, you work 9 till 5, but I'm trying to somehow pitch it to the Americans that you can listen to this in your lunch break, because some people said, oh, I can't write in the chat very much because I'm at work. Maybe you can then listen while you're eating your sandwich in the lunch break. You can listen better. And in Europe, in the UK, it would start at 5 p.m., which is when you should be leaving work. So one thing you can do is, if you're stuck in traffic, just use your phone, leave work at 5. And then, as you're driving home, listen to the Techno Forum. You can't over the radio, but you can, with modern entertainment systems and cars, over your mobile phone connected to speakers, and just listen on the way home. Don't listen to brainwash radio. They just tell you the same sort of crap over and over. So 5 p.m. in the UK and 6 p.m. in Europe. And by 6 p.m., you shouldn't be at work. If you are at work at 6 p.m., which I was for a very long time, you're being exploited, my friend. You're being exploited by the Crown Corporation. You should get home, be with your family. So this is the idea. Midday in the East Coast, 1 p.m. This is right? Sorry, I get confused. No, it's 11 a.m. in Central America, sadly, but East Coast, where we've got a lot of viewers, it is midday, 5 p.m. in the UK, 6 p.m. in Central Europe. This is the schedule. So thank you very, very much for listening, and thank you for your support. And let's move forward and let's get bigger and better and start building big harpoons so that we go after these killer sharks, and killer whales. Not the real ones in nature, which we should protect, but these guys who are totally mad. So thank you for listening. Bye for now, and hopefully see you coming Thursday.